Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this conversation about the Boston University School of Public Health. I'm Sandro Galea, and I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the School of Public Health. And I'm here with Rafiq Wabi, who you'll hear from shortly, who is one of our students. So this conversation is really part of our ongoing engagement with future students, with prospective students. We want you to know what is available at the school and how the school can help you be successful. We take our engagement with students very seriously, just like we take our engagement with public health very seriously. We see public health as having an enormously important role in the future of the world, and we see our students as the future of public health. You are the people who are going to make the world a better place, and we are delighted with our student body, with students like Rafiq in our student community, who we see both as enriching our community, but perhaps even more importantly, who we see as the people who are going to create a better world in the future. We invest a lot in our students. Every year we give about $7 million in scholarship funds. And when students come into our community, we make a big effort to help all students thrive. We have peer coaches, travel fund for students to attend regional, national, and global meetings. We have a wellness coordinator, and our students, I think, show this. I think our students live this, and I think our students' success speaks for this. We have 94% of our MPH graduates are employed within 6 months of graduation, and 100% of our Master of Science graduates are employed in their occupation of choice within those 6 months, which is actually pretty remarkable. These are numbers that we are proud of. But of course, as everybody knows, numbers are only part of the story. We are here today to tell the story with a little bit more color, perhaps, by giving you some of our own personal narratives about our engagement with the story. And I've had the great pleasure over the years as being dean of getting to know some of our star students, Rafiq being one of them. And Rafiq is a student at the school, also works as a graduate teaching assistant, and he has kindly agreed to lead today's conversation. He'll be asking me questions, I'll ask him some questions, and we're going to open this up online so that you, the audience, can ask us questions. So with that said, with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Rafiq. Rafiq.
Cool, thank you so much. I'm really glad to kind of be here and have this opportunity. Initially, I was on the pre-med route, and I was interested in being a physician. And soon after that, I realized I was much more interested in the systems and in the conditions that create health. And so that's really what led me to thinking about public health. And as I started to look for schools and programs to apply for, one of the things that really caught my attention about BUSPH was the various certificates, and that's our concentrations that we apply under as. And the one that really caught my attention is it's got a long title, but it's Community Assessment, Program Design, Implementation, and Evaluation, or CAPD for short, which really fit everything I was interested in. It was housed in the Community Health Sciences Department, and that's really what I'm interested in doing. And so I really liked just that concentration and that focus that I could be a part of. And as I started to get some acceptances and compare some of the schools, they were all really, really great programs. I really have enjoyed that has felt like it's really the center of my learning experience and of my practice experience here, is that we're constantly thinking about equity. How can we be thinking about the ways in which particular groups that our country and our society have marginalized, and how can we apply tailored approaches to really address those issues? And so I think that's a value that I really look for, and I have found here at the school. I'd say the second one has been really my interaction with the faculty. I have never once felt intimidated by any of the faculty here. They really have an open door policy, and they really stay true to that I walk past an office and I see a professor and I say hi, and they tell me to come on in and just have a conversation, and that's something I really value, because I think in an educational experience you want mentorship, you want to be guided. And I'd say the last value that I really respect about the school here is I wanted a sense of freedom to pursue things that I'm interested in, whether it's the classes I take, projects I want to pursue, research I want to be a part of, and then also have faculty and staff to really guide and say, that's a good idea, what if you try this, what if you try that, and really feel supported by them.
Have you had challenges? What challenges have you had in terms of dealing with faculty and staff here?
I think one of the largest challenges that I've had just as a student overall has been around diversity and inclusion. And I think particularly myself as an immigrant, as a person of color, something I really look for is having regular faculty and mentors of color, and that is something that has sometimes been challenging to find here. But what I do value and respect is that the school is aware of this, and they're constantly making changes, and I think that acknowledgement of that is really important, and I've just been impressed that it's not something we shy away from, and can say that this is something we want to improve on, so that when students like myself come to the school, they can see people who look like them, people who came from similar backgrounds, make it to the place that they want to be, and help inspire them.
Excuse me. It's really. I think it's really interesting to hear you say that, Rafiq. It's one of the mantras that I use in talking to our faculty and our staff and our students often, as you've heard me say, is we cannot aspire to be a school without challenges. Our aspiration should be to make sure that we're clear about our challenges and to make sure that we are doing everything we can to help meet those challenges. And I think one of the areas that we have really thrown our heart and soul in the past few years is making sure that we have a school that embraces issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice at the heart of what we do. We have our Dean of Diversity and Inclusion, Dean Cozier, who's done a tremendous amount of work on this. We have pipeline programs. We have invested heavily in diversifying our faculty and staff population. And we should be clear, we have a long way to go. And it is, and I think it's something that I hope, and it's really nice to hear you say this, we've been honest about it. It's actually, we have a way to go, and we have a way to go moving beyond your and my particular identities to creating a school which actually represents populations. And ultimately, I think that's where we want to be. So it's a really, you and I could spend a whole hour talking about this, as we have. I think it's an important challenge for us as a school, and if we can say that we are both rising to the challenge, making an effort, and also achieving tangible progress as we are, I feel like we're heading in the right direction. Let me change tack for a second. One of the things that we try to do, as you know, is give students the freedom to pursue their ideas and interests, and to support self-directed projects. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done with that freedom?
Yeah. So one of the cool things that our school does is we have part of our practice department is the Activist Lab, and they have this opportunity that's given to students called the Activist Bucks, and it's a small grant project, and it awards micro grants to students who have ideas, and essentially it's very simple. The idea just needs to be related to public health, and it needs to be working and partnering with a community organization or some public health entity in the city. And so I applied for a small seed fund to pilot a hip-hop writing class at a local house of correction. And the main target is really to focus on individuals with substance use disorder, and to have it be a creative outlet to process their incarceration, to process their substance use disorders. And it was cool to see that there was overwhelming support by the Activist Lab, and particularly by Dean Cox and the Associate Dean Ann Fiddler. And at first they were somewhat skeptical. They're like, okay, this may be difficult to find a site to do this at, but how can we support you? And I kept contacting people. I spoke to people who maybe were not so interested in the project, and then eventually, using connections, found a site to do it at. And since then, I've had the chance to write about it through our public health post. This year, I'm actually joined by 9 other students who, together as a collective, we are doing some art-based and advocacy work at this House of Correction, using music and using other forms of art. And it's just been really cool because these are things I'm passionate about, and creative and innovative ways to address them. And I think that's the point of school and academia, is that you push the boundaries and you think creatively to tackle some of the most difficult public health challenges. And I've been so impressed by the school that they've allowed me to do that, and have supported and invested in me financially to do that. And so I'm kind of looking forward to, in the future, what other students do, feeling that freedom to be innovative and creative in their approaches.
I've been a big fan of your hip hop classes, which I think is a really wonderful expression of the kind of freedom that we try to seed for our students. Let me ask you about the travel fund. I think, if I remember correctly, you used the travel fund to go to a conference. Can you talk a little bit about what that was about?
Yeah, so I do some research with Boston Medical Center, and the project has only a limited amount of funds, and I really wanted to go to present and to share some of our research, and so it was a very simple process. I applied through the school, and I state, what is my role in the research and what I'll be presenting at, what are the costs, and then in a matter of 3 weeks, I received a notification saying it was approved, and I got all the funding I needed to go to that conference, and I'm actually applying for another one in the spring, and and it makes a lot of sense, right? If the students, I felt like I'm not just here to receive and to learn, but I'm also here to contribute to the wealth of knowledge, and that is shown by the school's commitment to support students going to conferences, to present and to share their work, to be an extension of the school, and it's just been great because I don't have the finances to support myself to go to these conferences, and so it's great that the school supported me to do that.
That's terrific. Can you talk a bit about your practicum itself, Rafiq?
Yeah, so the practicum is an opportunity for us, at some point in the 2 years, or however long you're doing the program in, to really get some real life work experience in the field of public health. And so I did mine through a public health consulting group called Health Resources in Action. They're local here in Boston, and I was really attracted to the type of work they do and interested. They have a racial and health equity lens that I was really drawn to, and so
what do they do, Rafiq? What does Health Resources in Action do?
Yeah, so Health Resources in Action, they do a bunch of different projects. They do technical assistance within public health. They do consulting. They have a couple of subspecialties. They focus on youth work and substance use as well. And so the department that I joined, though, is their grant-making department. And they were working with the Department of Public Health to work on a statewide fund. And so I was part of a team that was working on creating the grant and really developing what this grant would look like, who would be the applicants, what are our goals for the grant. And it was a really cool process because I'm interested in doing research, and so I'll be applying for grants often. And it was great to be on the other side of it.
To see what it's like, yeah.
Yeah, how is that process done? And then what was really great is after I finished my practicum, and they actually invited me to be on the review committee for the grant. And so I got this awesome experience to work on building a grant and then seeing applications come in, and just seeing really cool projects focused on addressing root level causes of health inequities, and it was just a great experience.
That's cool.
I felt very valued, and it was just a great organization to get real practice experience.
That's really great. Our signature programs, so as and just to explain to people listening online, we do a really rich suite of programs where we have guests who come and talk about public health, about the future of public health, going from the Surgeon General to directors of institutes and NIH, and we call that series our signature programs. And I certainly enjoy them, and I know you do too, but can you talk about, have you had a favorite one, and what has that been?
Yeah, there have been a lot. I remember when the signature program list came out in the summer for what was coming, I was just really amazed at the variety of talks and the speakers that were coming. And I think my favorite one was, we had one kind of celebrating and really looking at, not really celebrating, but really taking a look at the 400 years of inequality. And this was really a whole day long one, and Rodessa Jones came, and she's just this force of nature. She does prison artwork, and so she works with incarcerated women who may have HIV, and she does a theater program for them. And again, these are the types of things I'm interested in. I like to see how public health can be creative, and so it was great because the day involved sometimes that was very academic and presenting data and research, and then we had Rodessa come and perform one of the pieces, and so it was just a cool signature program that really brought in a wealth of information and knowledge, but also an attempt to inspire students so that it's not you just come to this event, you maybe take some notes and leave, but it really leaves you with something to think about and how you can apply it to your own work.
Yeah, I also really liked that signature program because it was, what we try to do with all our signature programs is to bring academics to the table. We are ultimately a university, and what we do is we create knowledge and want to make sure we discuss that knowledge. But rooted as we are in our think, teach, do, in our way of paying attention to scholarship, to education, and to practice, I thought that they did a lovely job of weaving them. And I don't take credit for it. It was Dean Cox and his team who organized that. And so I'm actually delighted you mentioned that. Yeah. So I'd like to invite our online audience to submit any questions you have. But the admissions team will be fielding them, and Rafiq and I will do the best to answer them. But meanwhile, Rafiq, maybe you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I'd love the opportunity to ask you some questions. So first I was going to ask just how long have you been at the School of Public Health, at BU specifically, and why did you choose to come here?
Yeah, so I've been here now more than 4 years, and 5 years. Wow, time flies when you're having fun. I came here from New York. I was at Columbia University before, where I was the chair of epidemiology. And I came here, when I was listening to you talk about why you came to public health, you and I share similar motivations. I'm trained as a doctor originally, but I've always had a real social justice mission behind everything I do. And I've always been interested in how do we use learning, and I use the word learning generally because I feel like in my science I've been doing learning, and in my teaching I've been doing learning, to create a better and healthier world. And when I was sort of at a phase of my career where I was considering and interested in potential jobs like this, I was just deeply attracted by BU's history. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a bit of a cold. BU has long been a school that has been grounded in social justice at its core, and that was very attractive for me. It was very attractive for me to be part of a school like that, and I had the great privilege then of, when I joined, leading us on a strategic thinking exercise that crystallized our think, teach, do. And I really do love the idea of being part of a school that takes education and scholarship and practice equally seriously. And it's not so easy. It's not such an easy thing to do, because as I sometimes joke with our faculty and staff, it's the good news is there are only 3 things we're trying to do, but the bad news is there are 3 things we're trying to do, which is harder than doing one thing. Yeah. And building a school that takes education as seriously as we do research, and takes research as seriously as we do practice, has been a real joy. And I have not regretted being here a single day. Every day I think we are building something great, and it's really a privilege to be part of it. Yeah,
that's really cool. And so I guess one question is, graduate school is a big endeavor, and it's challenging, and there are a lot of things that students, as they're applying, or even if they've been accepted, they think through. What are certain ways in which SPH is making it easier for students to pursue an education here?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Excuse me. We talk a lot about the cost of higher education, and it's expensive. It is expensive to get a good education. As someone who paid for my own graduate work through a combination of really grants and loans, I am very sympathetic to that. I guess I would answer it in 2 different ways. Number one, we as a school make an enormous effort to make as many funds available as possible to help defray the cost of education. I think 90-something% of our students get some form of scholarship. On average, we have about 25% scholarship rate. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is the cost and the yield of the higher education. And when you look at our student employment numbers, which is what I mentioned before, is essentially full employment. 94% of students employed after about 6 months really means all the students who really want a job are employed, because then there's also a few percent of people who are still looking or are thinking about other things. And when you look at the salaries that people are making right away after graduating, for mission-driven jobs, which is ultimately what we do in public health, we are, I think, creating an opportunity for students to earn right away a very good salary for a mission-driven job and put them on a path for enormous lifelong success. Now, we should be clear that broadly speaking, we are aiming for mission-driven jobs. And that doesn't mean that a lot of our students do not also work in the private sector, but even when students work in the private sector, I find that they are motivated then by what they learn here at the school. And it is a real privilege to be in mission-driven jobs. So I actually feel like the question really is sort of what's the return on that investment? And if the return on the investment is you're moving into a job that you're passionate about, where you can actually fund reasonably a mission-driven career, I think that's all worth it. You know, you hear a lot in career advice to say, you know, well, do what you love. Well, that's true to some extent. I mean, I want to make sure you're doing what you love in a way that actually can pay the bills. And I actually think, you know, I'm sorry I'm being a little bit operational. I think a career in public health can pay the bills well, and I think it is a deeply satisfying career path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have a question from Anne-Marie in Boston, and it is, what is the biggest challenge in public health today as you see it?
It's a great question. I think the answer that's expected with a question like that is something like, you know, coronavirus, which as we're talking is a real threat, pandemic threat, or chronic disease and obesity, which has become really the driver of the global burden of disease. I think these are real threats, and I think there's a good lens to see health threats that way, through the lens of what is the health threat. But I think the biggest challenge is, I would flip it on its head. The biggest challenge is that we do not think enough about how politics and power and policy, the places we live, the foundational drivers of health, safe houses, good schools, livable wages, gender equity, clean air, drinkable water, fair economy, about how those forces ultimately drive our health. So I think the biggest challenge is we need to understand as a society that a healthy person and a healthy world are roughly the same thing. And our effort in public health should be towards making that link and towards acting on creating the conditions that make people healthy. And I think that is the effort that I hope we are preparing you and all our students to be able to tackle when you leave here.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because as I do work in certain classes, and you know, oftentimes I have to do literature reviews, and you know, I'll be, you know, looking through some random literature, and it's not rare that I see Galea all around in the work that I'm looking at. And so I'm just interested, could you share a little bit about the research you're involved in and interested in personally?
Yeah, so first of all, I've had an enormous good fortune and privilege to spend now 2 decades in public health scholarship, and it really has been my great joy to do that. And I think broadly I've been interested in 3 things. Number one, I've been interested in the social causes of health, and that ties to what I just said a few minutes ago, which is I've been interested in how does the world around us affect our health. And within that space, I've done work, for example, on cities, on how is it that we create cities, build cities that affect our health. How is it that politics affects our health? How is it that our human interactions affect our health? So it's this broad area, social causes of health. Second area I've been interested in is mental health. And I've always been interested in mental health. And you know, when I started being interested in mental health, it was really a marginalized part of public health. I think now there's much more awareness about it. And among our students, it really is very heartening because there's a lot more awareness among mental health. I suspect if I were to sit among a body of students and say, you know, mental health is an important part of public health, they would say, well, yes. But 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. Right. So I've always been interested in mental health, and within that, I've been very interested in depression, substance use, things like post-traumatic stress disorder. And then the third area has been trauma. I've always been interested in trauma. I've always seen trauma as a really an avoidable, preventable cause of poor health, of disability, and of mortality. And so I've always been interested in trauma, the causes of trauma, and the consequences of trauma. So broadly speaking, social causes of health, mental health, and trauma. And that has fueled then a lot of other thinking. And this is just sort of fueled thinking about broadly the purpose of public health and the nature of population health science. And I've had the great good fortune of working with really good teams. I think I've mentored about 75 students at this point in my career. And one of the joys of that is that students have led me. And sometimes, I've published something on this and that, which isn't really core to what I do, but sometimes people say, why'd you do that? Well, it's because I had a student, and they were really interested in this area. And my job as a mentor is to say, let me help you realize what you're interested in.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I when I was applying to public health programs, one of the things on my radar was not looking at the dean and saying, okay, who's the dean of this school? What's their research profile like? It just wasn't one of the things I was really looking at. What's been cool is as I've been here and really getting to know you and setting up meetings with you, that wasn't something I was expecting to do with the dean of the school. I always thought probably too busy, too much going on. And last year I met with you twice, just one-on-one, to just talk about some things around diversity and inclusion, and then another time I met with you to talk about the future of my interests, and so it's been kind of a cool surprise to have you even mentor me a little bit, and that's just been I think I don't know if that's common in most schools of public health, where the deans usually have a lot of responsibilities, and you do, and so I've just been very impressed that you've still managed to find time to mentor students in the school. And could you just talk about that, and why you would do that?
Well, in truth, you're doing me a favor, because one of the challenges of being dean is that as you said, I have a lot of responsibilities, and a lot of them are behind the scenes, back end. But the reason I became a faculty member is to interact with students. So I'm actually delighted whenever students reach out. And there are pragmatic realities. Like, often it takes a while to schedule a meeting just because my calendar is filled up with things that I have to do with institutional responsibilities. But I actually love talking to students. I have no idea whether it's typical or not. It's actually because it's ultimately what we're here for. I like talking to students, I like talking to faculty, I like talking to staff. And it's sort of easy in my job to sort of be caught in a bubble because there are so many pressures on my time. But the legacy that anyone in my seat fills, and I'm always very conscious of the fact that as dean, I'm creating a structure which then to pass it on to somebody else. I mean, my job is to make sure the institution is bigger and more important than me. That's clearly my job, and a lot of the satisfaction of the job is the people who are trained while I'm here, who then will go on to do great things. Right. And so I really enjoy meeting with students. And as you know, I do a monthly coffee chat with students, and that's sort of a drop by. Usually we have 20, 30 students who come, and we sit down and really we talk about whatever's on students' minds. And I hope students like it. To be honest, it's one of my highlights of my month, because it's just great. It's great, and we have conversations that go from minutiae, some of which, to be honest, I don't really know. Like, sometimes students ask me about things that we can do better, which I'll have to say, look, you should talk to the Dean of Education, just because I actually don't know those details. And sometimes we talk about what's happening in the world, and sometimes we talk about career paths, sometimes we talk about mentoring, and I'm always delighted to see where those conversations take us. So I enjoy it.
That's really cool. So when I was applying for my MPH, and this is something that I know a lot of my peers do, is we take the GRE and we look at our GPA, and schools we're interested in will type in like BUSBH average GRE score, average GPA, and sometimes we look at that and we'd say, well, my score is below that. I am below the average, and I've maybe hurt my chance of getting into the school. There was one university that I was looking at, and my scores were just not in the range at all, so I didn't even apply. And so what's been cool is that very recently our school has decided to drop the GRE requirement, and so I was wondering, you could talk about why is that a decision you decided to make?
Yeah, no, it's there was in some respects a hard decision, just because it's as far as I know, we were the first sort of leading school to do that. And it's always then difficult when you do something like that, because you must make sure you're doing the right thing. Because at core, we want to make sure that we have in our student body an excellent student body who can meet the rigors of the program. And it's a demanding program, as you know. I mean, you can talk about it. And when I talk to students, they always tell me, it's busy, I'm learning a lot, but to learn a lot, it's a lot of work. So we need to make sure that we have students who are up to a certain level who can meet the program. But then I want to make sure that we are not creating artificial barriers. And the more I read about it, the more our team discussed this, the more we felt like the GRE was not doing that there are deep structural inequities in what the GRE is reflecting, that is really reflecting much more people's opportunity sets and the advantages they've been given than really giving us an indication of whether or not people are ready for our program. So to my mind, it had two strikes against it. One is that it wasn't really predicting success in our program, and number two, it was embedding in it a whole range of societal and structural barriers to success, particularly of students from marginalized backgrounds. And that there was plenty for us to say, no, we should not be doing this. And I think more and more schools will end up realizing that the GRE does not have utility that way. And obviously we still look at grades, but we really make an effort to look at students' whole picture when students are applying. And we should be clear that there's always, we want to make sure that we admit students who can handle the program, right? That is really important. But at the same time, we try to look very carefully and say, has the student shown that they can overcome adversity in difficult contexts, and even if they don't necessarily have the academic metrics to show for it? And we will make an effort to really work with students to make sure that they help them succeed. And some of my favorite success stories, without identifying any individuals, since I've been here, have been students who come from really challenging backgrounds, who have graduated to our program, and they're now out and doing the work of public health, which is creating a healthier world. And that's really cool.
Yeah, that's great. I believe we have another question.
Yes, so this is a question about Accepted Students Day. So we actually have Accepted Students Day coming up on March 14th, and throughout the semester we have Friday visits for students who are accepted. What do you think, from your perch as a student, what do you think are the benefits for a student who's accepted to come to campus, and how did you come to campus, and how did that affect your decision?
I did not, but I had some peers who did, and one of the great things is during Accepted Students Day is that other students will be there, current students that are there. I hope to be there, and it's a great opportunity to have in-depth conversations with the current students, and in face to be and say, how's your experience been like here? What have been some challenges? And you can ask certain questions in front of professors who may potentially be your professors, and so there's sometimes I can understand there may be a little shyness to that, and so the opportunity to really speak with students and just see what life would be like on the campus, I think is a really great opportunity to really make a decision, because it is a big decision. This is a big investment of time and money, and you want to make sure that this is the right fit in place for you. And I think there's only so much you can do by just reading things on the website, and so to come, it's really gives you a great benefit to really feel like, yeah, this feels right. This feels like a good fit for me.
If I may, in part, answer my own question, I try to always meet with students through when we have Admitted Students Days, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity to see the campus, see the physical space. We have a beautiful campus, and see the student spaces, and really get a tactile sense of your environment for the next year, 2 years. And sometimes when students ask me sort of for advice about either taking education or jobs, I always say, think about your day-to-day. Like what's your day-to-day going to be like? Like, do you like the place? Do you like the people? And it's really hard to get that just from the website and from what you read. And so I always encourage people who can make it to Admitted Students Days to come and to meet us, and to meet me, to meet the faculty, and to meet the staff, because ultimately it is the human-to-human interaction that brings joy on a day-to-day basis. And to say to yourself, is this going to be the place where I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, and where I'm going to be happy?
Right.
That seems important to me.
Yeah, that is really important. I guess I have another question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where do you see or envision the school in 10 years?
It's a great question. It's a perfect question because we're in the process right now of mapping out a strategic plan for the school for the next 10 years. So as I said, I've been here a bit more than 5 years. When I first got here in 2015, we laid out a strategic plan for the school, which is fairly typical when a new dean comes on. And that was a 5-year plan. Now we're 2020, so we're 5 years in. And now we're in the process of engaging the whole school. And we're now towards the end of the process of creating a 2025, 2030 strategic plan, which, as you know, because as a student you've been involved in this. And we did the strategic plan this year as sort of a community-wide effort where we engage students, faculty, staff, alumni broadly at the community level, and to create a sort of a ground-up strategic plan. And this is now taking shape, and I think we are headed in a direction of deepening our commitment to think, teach, do. To do ever better research, innovate in our educational programming, and be more creative and innovative about how we engage in the world of practice. I think within that, that's sort of at a high level, we are looking at addressing the key issues that we feel are challenges right now. You mentioned, for example, our diversity and inclusion, equity, and justice at the core of what we do. We're establishing clear targets for representation in our community. Issues of sustainability. We're establishing clear targets for how we can be, to use a shorthand, the greenest school possible. We're establishing clear targets for student satisfaction and how students and student course evaluations. We're establishing clear targets for the type of scholarship that we want to create. So I can talk about the clear sort of tactics and targets that we're establishing, but I think all of it rolls up to being the best possible school we can be that takes teaching, research, and practice seriously. And I feel like if we can do that, this will be a truly outstanding place to be.
Oh, that's good. I guess I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Just trying to gain a sense of, students and, that may be considering the school and just considering public health, and where I was at when I was applying. And, one thing that it's not to say it hasn't been a value in previous generations, but I think one thing that, my generation and those younger than me really value and care about is what community engagement looks like in public health. And I think, it would be a shame for us to not look back on the really harmful things that this field and the medical field has done to communities and to people. And in several of my classes, we've really spent time to make sure we address that, to be like, here are ways in which we're supposed to care for the health of the public and we didn't. And there are many examples. And so, one thing I'm always thinking about is as I enter into academia, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have, really this colonizer mentality of let me come into your community, I have my degree and I know better, let me just tell you how to do this. And, it's a challenging thing to balance those two because at the same time, I am learning things, I'm learning methods, I'm learning skills. But as one of my professors, Dr. Candace Belanoff always says, she says the community knows the community best and what it needs. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective, how do, incoming students who have that, maybe hesitancy or fear that, they're going to be pulled in certain directions, how do we really maintain that balance and to really center the communities we're working with and not tell them what to do, but to learn from them and to work with them?
Now you're asking another question we could spend an hour discussing. I agree with everything you said. I suppose I'll give you my simple answer since we only have a minute, is I think humility should be a core part of public health. And as you know, in my last book, I wrote about this. I have a chapter about humility. And I think when I talk about humility, I mean that we often, as a discipline, as with any other discipline, I think we make the mistake of saying, we know this. We have it figured out. And you, the community, don't worry, we got this. And that is how we make mistakes. And that is how we create mindsets that lead us down paths which do not really meet the needs of populations. You know, we need to create a world that fosters acceptance, tolerance, respect, community, justice, equitable distribution of resources, and we are not going to do that without keeping the community at the center of what we do and keeping community engagement at the center of what we do. You know, public health, maybe this is actually a good segue to ending, because the question is, what is public health? And there are many definitions of public health, but my favorite definition is that public health is what we do collectively to create a better world. And that comes from a National Academy of Medicine report, but I like it's what we do collectively. And collectively means collectively. It means it's not you, Rafiq, by yourself. It's not me, Sandro, by myself. It is what we do together. Now, the downside of that, it's a lot harder to do things collectively. The upside of that is when you do it right, it's brilliant. It's a really beautiful thing. And it's hard. I mean, the work we do is hard work. I mean, saying, you can be trite about it, say our job is to create a better world. Like, okay, it's actually hard to do that. There are many forces arrayed against creating the change to create a better world. And I suppose I see our job as a school as to equip you as a student with the tools to do that when you leave. And you know, as you've heard me say when I talk to students, it's my challenge is to students to say, now you go out and you do better than we did. My expectation is that your generation is going to do better than my generation. And I don't mean that in a sort of generational conflict sense. I mean it in a way how it should be. And then I would expect generation to come after you to do better than what you did. Because that's the way we're going to create a better.
That's really cool.
So, Rafiq, thank you.
As
always, it's a real privilege talking. I really enjoyed it. And thank you to everybody who's joined us. And if you have additional questions, you can follow up with our admissions team. There's a handy email, which is asksph@bu.edu, one word, asksph@bu.edu. You can come to one of our info sessions. You can attend one of our Accepted Students Days, and you can find details for these events on our admissions website. We would love to hear from you. I'm also happy to hear from you. My email is very, very findable. You can Google me and send me an email. Often prospective students email me things which I don't know the answer to, and that's okay. I'll connect you with our director of admissions. But good luck as you think about what you want to do in coming years. I really hope you join us.